And now I would like to introduce Ms. Shastri Ramnath to the podium to introduce our honorary doctorate recipient. Shastri.
Chancellor Paikin, Board of Governors, graduates, faculty, and friends, I am so excited to be here. When I first met Terry McGibbon, I was you. A new graduate, fresh out of university, and ready to start my career. Let me take you to the place when I first met Terry. It was my second day on the job here in Sudbury, and we were having a party. It was the open house to the new FNX Mining, formerly Fort Knox Gold. I'm 25, awkwardly standing in the entrance of this strange new office, and in boldly walks this guy. So here he is, the long-anticipated CEO, Terry McGibbon. He was so much more built than I had imagined, and he had a presence that was very commanding. He lit up the room with his smile and his energy, and I remember distinctly thinking, this guy looks like a lot of fun. I watched Terry circle the room, leaving a trail of laughter behind him. He talked to every single person, and I mean every single person in that room, including me, an inexperienced junior geologist. You have to understand that at this point in time, the industry was in terrible shape and reeling from the Bre-X days. During the party, I looked at my colleague Dave and I said, "Where did this guy come from?" Well, he said, "Terry is actually a retired geologist from Inco who took over Fort Knox Gold for something to do in his golden years." He went on to tell me that Terry had just secured the biggest mining deal in the industry at that time by acquiring 5 historical mines here in Sudbury and raising $30 million for the company I had just joined. I remember thinking to myself, excellent, I'm going to have a job for a long, long time. Fast forward 8 years later, FNX was the best performing stock on the Toronto Stock Exchange from 2000 to 2010 and one of Canada's greatest mining success stories. Our team made several new discoveries and put 3 mines into production, all under this man's leadership. Eventually, Terry merged FNX with Quadra and sold the company for $3.5 billion to KGHM. The business model was groundbreaking and led Terry to incubate and found 3 more companies. He secured significant assets from major companies for Torex Gold focused in Mexico, Invi Metals in Ecuador, and a greenstone belt in Canada's high Arctic for TMAC Resources, which if you haven't guessed it yet, it's named after him. Terry not only went on to receive the PDAC's prestigious Viola Macmillan Developer of the Year Award in 2004, but he received the Ernst & Young Entrepreneur of the Year in 2005. And just a couple of months ago, Terry was inducted into Canada's Mining Hall of Fame. What a pleasure it was to share that with you and your family. Terry has also played an important role here at Laurentian University, as he has chaired the university's most successful fundraising campaign, the Next 50 campaign, where the university raised $65 million on a goal of only $50 million. He made also significant introductions to key people, including the orchestration of a $1 million donation from Quadra FNX to support the Goodman School of Mines. If you ask other people what made Terry so successful, they would tell you that he is a strategic thinker and a confident risk taker. I see him as an excellent communicator. He can tell a geological story to an investor and break down a balance sheet for a geologist. That takes talent. Terry is a family man, and his biggest supporter, Cynthia, is here today. She was his childhood sweetheart. Terry often talks about his family and grandchildren, and I have had the good fortune to work closely with his daughter Candace, who is the CEO of Invi Metals. When Terry had been asked about why he was so successful, he said it was because of 3 Ps: perseverance, patience, and passion. Inside of Terry, there is a burning passion for the mining industry. I saw it on that day that he walked into the room for that party, and I see that light right now here on the stage. Ladies and gentlemen, graduates, and honored guests, Mr. Terry McGibbon.
admit you to the degree of Doctor of Sciences honoris causa with all the rights, privileges, and honors thereto appertaining. Au nom de l'Université et sur recommandation du Sénat et du Conseil des gouverneurs, je vous confère le titre de Docteur honoris causa et sciences avec les droits, honneurs et privilèges qui s'y rattachent. Félicitations.
How do you follow that? Now, you know, I've been a great admirer and advocate for Shastri for so many years. Bonjour and thank you. Chancellor Bacon, the Board of Governors, members of the Board of Governors, President Zundel, and distinguished guests. Graduates, and mostly the parents of graduates and the grandparents of graduates. Until you're my age and you're looking from this side, you don't realize how hard it was to get you to where you are for their work and encouragement and financial support. Today, I also want to welcome and thank two of my three children. Candace and Steve are here, as is my son-in-law, Candace's husband, Tim McGuire. And we have 4 of our 7 grandchildren with us: Benjamin, Augusta, Charlotte, William, and also a special person who looks after the McGuire family, Mary Jane. Thank you. Thank you all for being here, and I especially want to thank my beautiful wife of 50 years. Shastri has said, Cynthia and I went on our first prom together, and we've been together ever since. I would like to thank the Board of Governors Committee of Honorary Degrees for bestowing on me such a great honor. I have watched Laurentian University grow from a modest Northern Ontario university to now being recognized as Canada's go-to university for mineral exploration and mining, and the addition of many other outstanding faculties and studies. In the very few minutes that I have to address Laurentian University's graduating class of 2019, I will discuss some challenges and opportunities you will face in your careers and indeed in your life. When Cynthia and I arrived in Sudbury in the fall of 1968, following our honeymoon train trip from beautiful, lush Nova Scotia, we awoke to realize that we had moved to the moon. Yes, 50 years ago, Sudbury was known worldwide for its lunar landscape of black, barren rock and stunted vegetation, which was the result of 50 years of toxic sulfuric acid fumes freely spreading across the landscape and polluting the entire environment for miles around. In the 1960s, the solution was dilution, with the superstack construction being completed in 1972 to disperse pollutants away from the Sudbury region. This led to SO2, or sulfuric acid, from the superstack moving thousands of kilometers across the Atlantic and into the upper atmosphere, and the acid rain issue became a global one. The challenge to my generation was to stop acid rain worldwide and to help Mother Nature to bring life back to the dead lakes and to revegetate the barren environment. Because of the need to reduce emissions through technology, Sudbury, and particularly Laurentian, has gone from a pollution capital to one of the most innovative centers in the world. It's an amazing and encouraging story, of which Laurentian University played a huge part. Now look at Sudbury. This morning, my family toured the Sudbury area, admired the beautiful green, lush landscape and pristine lakes. Certainly a far cry from what Cynthia and I saw some 50 years ago. I like to call Sudbury the Palm Springs of mining. My generation over the past 50 years faced a tremendous challenge and opportunity to help Mother Nature restore its beauty and splendor to the Sudbury area and elsewhere. It took a huge financial commitment, research and engineering, and a lot of social pressure and hard work, but it showed me two things. Man can clean up his messes relatively quickly, and that Mother Nature is extremely resilient and can heal herself much quicker than we give her credit for. My generation's environmental challenge was acid rain imposed upon us by our predecessors. Your generation's challenge is climate change imposed upon you by your predecessors. I first heard of the problems with carbon emissions and the resulting greenhouse effect when I was in my senior year in university. That was 50 years ago, and we have not done much about it yet. Now we have no choice but to reduce man's contribution to carbon in the atmosphere and the resulting climate change. Unlike acid rain, this problem cannot be solved by industry or governments alone. Every person here is part of the problem and the solution. We all have increasing choices available with our lifestyles, the type of cars we drive, the products we consume. In addition, we must also consider nature's influence on the world and remember that just 20,000 years ago, right here where we sit now, there were 2 miles of ice, solid ice. We are still coming out of that ice age. So our planet has experienced severe climate change long before man started polluting. I have never believed in sin taxes as a method to control behavior. Putting the price of cigarettes to all-time highs didn't stop people from smoking. It took awareness and a cultural change. Imposing carbon taxes and then providing refunds seems to me like a typical government tax grab and a silly way to try to reduce carbon emissions. In fact, I think it's a punitive tax on the poor and middle class. This is your generation's greatest challenge, and I have every confidence that bright, hard-working, socially aware, and environmentally aware young people will successfully tackle climate change, just as was the challenge of acid rain. I personally believe that the only long-term sustainable solution to obtaining safe, sustainable energy and a real reduction in climate change is harvesting the sun's unlimited clean energy. I personally would spend all of the carbon tax revenues on solar research and energy and engineering. The second huge challenge and opportunity that I see for this year's graduating class, and indeed for all of us, is sustainability along with gender and Aboriginal diversification. The Canadian mining industry has evolved over the last 50 years, embracing sustainability, working hard to ensure that all aspects of the mining cycle are managed responsibly. Building trust, particularly with the communities in which we operate, is the foundation for any business to operate. Economic, legal, ethical, philanthropic expectations are important considerations with respect to our environmental and social responsibilities. This was not, however, true historically. I am the executive chairman of TMAC Resources, one of 3 companies with mining operations in Nunavut, Canada. Under the Nunavut Land Claims Agreement, a modern treaty signed in 1993, the Inuit have an equal say in the management of their lands and resources and a share of the economic benefits from development taking place in their territory. Consequently, negotiations with the relevant regional Inuit associations are necessary to obtain a license to operate. In 2015, TMAC Resources entered into a 20-year agreement with the Kitikmeot Inuit Association that addressed environmental covenants, economic benefits, wildlife, employment, and training, etc. There is ongoing dialogue, and we meet regularly. The agreement reflects our commitment to act in partnership and is fundamental to operating. Unfortunately, most of the rest of Canada does not enjoy similar enlightened modern treaty agreements and Indigenous relations like those we have in Nunavut. Historically, Canada's land claims with First Nations and Indigenous people have not been fair and just, and this has led to turmoil and disputes in the advancement of many Canadian natural resource projects. Canada was built on natural resources and will continue to largely depend on future natural resources projects and businesses. It will be a great challenge for your generation to work in harmony with Canada's diversity of culture and people, but it is also a great opportunity to ensure that all Canadians enjoy this great country of ours. A skilled workforce is another imperative to all Canadian industries. Attracting and retaining talent is an ongoing challenge, particularly in the mining industry where we have an aging workforce, limited numbers of graduates in professional and technical fields, and a general lack of skilled labor. So where are our opportunities to address this challenge? While the advancement of technology has automated many aspects of our workforce, it is insufficient to adequately address the shortage of talent in our industry. In many industries, but particularly in the mining and forestry industry, we are ignoring half of our workforce, women. When I graduated in 1968, approximately 40% of my graduating geology class were female, but not one of them entered the mining industry. Why not? Mostly because they were not welcomed. Amazingly, legislation was a significant barrier. It is astonishing to think, in this modern world we now live in, that women were not permitted to work in underground mines in Ontario until 1968. My female fellow geological graduates were not allowed to practice their profession and work underground in Ontario. The sad reality is that I accepted that and did not think it unusual at the time, and I'm quite embarrassed about that. We are doing a lot better now, but almost 40 years later, Statistic Canada's data reveal that women represent only 18% of the Canadian mining industry. Of the 3 mining companies that I have most recently been involved with, 8 of the 21 executive positions were held by females, with 2 of the companies having female CEOs, Catherine Farrow, former CEO of TMAC Resources, and Candace MacGibbon, current CEO of INV Metals. Our Torex Gold Resources, operating a gold mine in Mexico, has a female chief operating officer. It can and must be done. I was delighted that Shastri agreed to introduce me today. Until she talked, I didn't think I was worthy of this award. Thank you, Shastri. Shastri is a great role model and example of a young professional woman who has worked extremely hard to move forward and to be successful in her career in a very male-centric mining industry. Shastri has been a very successful exploration geologist, a public mining company CEO, and now runs her own international natural resource consulting company while successfully balancing demands, both work and family. My daughter Candace has been a mentor to Shastri in balancing also a very hard workload and a family life. It's not easy. There's a huge opportunity for female graduates of today to enter the Canadian workforce and move up the corporate ladder and to be industry leaders. While today my address was mostly focused on because of my experience on the natural resource industry, the challenges and opportunities to stop climate change, to have sustainable industries, to have inclusive and diverse workforces, for all Canadian for all Canadians, and to promote gender and Aboriginal diversification are for everyone. And all of us must face these challenges and opportunities the best we can. And that is really a challenge and opportunity to this graduating class this year. And I have every confidence you will succeed. Thank you and best wishes.